G'day guys, welcome back to another episode of Uncle Paulie. Today, I'm going to be running you through the gold ute from TikTok. In today's episode, we're going to be doing a bit of a walkthrough. I've put up a questionnaire on Instagram last night and I'm going to be answering some of the questions that were asked. This ute hasn't been covered on YouTube or in a in-depth video for quite a few years, and I just wanted to actually go through and show you all the things that I've changed and done, because there's quite a lot. I've already had a quick skim through the questions, and a lot of the questions are actually what I was going to show you anyway. I'm going to go through and answer a lot of them first, and whatever's missed but I want to show you, I'll just show you anyway. I'm also about to go on a very big adventure that involves going to Cape York and Fink and Simpson Desert and a few other things again. So I'm going to run you through my touring setup. I'm kind of in the middle of setting up now. I've got a couple other little jobs to do, but the ute's nearly ready to go. I've got a few days up my sleeve and I'm heading off. Guess I better stop rambling on and get into it then. You guys have absolutely smashed me with questions. There is, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of questions here. I'm not going to be able to answer them all, but what I'm going to do is try my best to just answer the important ones and maybe some of the funny ones as well. Question number one. This one's from Sam Pringus 2006. What is your favorite thing about KFC? Oh, hang on, this is supposed to be about the ute. Okay, question number two. Are both snorkels hooked up? Of course not. As you can see, I do have two snorkels, but no, only this one is hooked up. Now, I have a very good point for this. Now, I know there's a lot of people that do get a little bit upset when you have two snorkels and they're not both hooked up, but I wanted to have two snorkels on the car for the look of it. I've got these two aerials for the same reason. This aerial, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret, it's not even hooked up. My selfie go, that's meant to be here, is over there on the wall of the shed. Two aerials, two snorkels, it all just looks symmetrical. I like it. When I actually thought about hooking the snorkels up, there's just a lot going on in the engine bay there. There's a few electronical components that are behind the battery, and there's a lot of stuff that you got to move to do it. And a lot of people go like, oh, you know, that's so pointless to have a snorkel there that doesn't work. But I actually argue this fact and say that it would be more stupid to hook it up, because the amount of the work that you'd have to go through to actually hook this snorkel up, the amount of airflow that's coming through this big dog here is enough to keep up with my standard motor. The only benefit that I could possibly see from hooking it up would be to be able to say, oh yeah, it's hooked up. How much of an improvement is a 5-link to a 4-link? Was it worth it? So I had a 5-link in this car and I have cut all of it out and I've put a 4-link in, and it was a big improvement, massive improvement. The main issues that I was having with the 5-link is I used an 80 series setup, so that means that I had 80 series geometry, which is great. But when you start pushing it to its limits, there's a few things that let it down, as any factory suspension would. The length of the arms is a big thing. The upper arms on an 80 series are like literally this long. A big thing that was happening with mine is when the diff would travel up and down, because those top arms were only this long, the pinion angle, as it all moves, it goes down like this and then it goes up like that in the travel a lot. So your rear tail shaft, the uni angle, is doing this all the time, and I was flogging out a lot of rear unis just by all the travel. The second thing was it's rubber bushed. Rubber bushes in arms on a car like this that has a lot of flex and that uses the flex quite often, it'll flog those bushes out in no time. So what I done was I changed to Heim joints and I extended the length of the top arms. I tried to rule out the things that I didn't like about the 5-link. So then I went to Tassie with TJ and Mac and Matty and Blake. I was running 37 Treps and they are pretty brutal on your driveline and all your mounts and your suspension and everything. And I actually bent my upper link mount on the beach, snatching the boys' hours. It was my fault, I was being a bit silly, but the torque of it, it actually pulled the cross member and it bent it, and it didn't tear the welds, it actually tore the bit of tube. Anyway, I welded it up in a BP servo at Strawn, I think it was. I'd done a couple other trips after that and it was all sweet. After the numerous other issues, I had shock clearance issues, all these issues that I was having, just little things because it was an 80 series setup squished into a 79 chassis and tried to make big flex and whatever else. I decided to bite the bullet. I sold my tray I used the money from the tray to buy a J-Race conversion kit, and then I done the 4-link. 4-link is absolutely awesome. We'll talk about it later. I might even chuck the ute on the hoist and show you around the suspension setup. Righto, we've got Braden Seri here. I don't know if that's how you say your name, but what engine work has been done to it? Wow, just wait till you see this. Absolutely nothing. Next question. All right, I will show you this. There's not a great deal going on in here, but I'll give you a quick rundown. Got this airbox that I made, fuel filter and a catch can, upgraded battery. Alrighty, we're getting serious now. We're gonna start talking numbers. Gold ute from TikTok has had a remap. This is the dyno sheet. It was making, let's have a bit of a geeze here. Before they dynoed it, it was making 161 horsepower. When they finished, it was making 212. This line here is the factory torque line, which is pretty pathetic. This one here is the torque line when they were finished with it. These two green lines are this middle number, which is like the middle tune. The torque line when they were finished. So as you can see, this little peak here, this line here is the horsepower line. So it goes up with the torque line, the same amount. It all peaks at about 1900 RPM, but then it drags out to about here, which is about 2500, which is where I change gears to the next gear, and then we do it all over again. On the factory tune, this here is the horsepower peak. So as you can see there, about 3200, 3000 RPMs. If you own one of these VDJs and it's stock untuned, you probably notice that if you want to pull away from the lights and try and race someone, if you try and go as fast as you want to go, you know your car, you'll be ringing it out to about 3000 RPM, because that's what I used to do. When I got it remapped, I had to learn how to drive it again and find where the power was. And it's a significant difference. One good thing about these utes is they're a big V8 motor that comes highly under-tuned, and they have the ability to just tune them and make them a lot better from not having to do really any mods at all. So one of the reasons I haven't got an aftermarket turbo, a big intercooler, big injectors and all these things on this ute is I wanted to keep it reliable. So I do a lot of remote touring and stuff like that where you don't want problems and you don't want to bugger an injector or something. Like, the second reason why I haven't done all that stuff is because I've never been able to afford it. So that's why. If I had money to waste, oh, of course I'd do it for sure. And I probably will down the track, but yeah, just haven't got around to it. How many Ks on her? Well, I'll show you. Here we go. 292,028. Basically nearly done 300,000 Ks. It'll probably hit it on this next trip, which is a little bit sad, but yeah. I bought the ute with 180,000 Ks and I've owned it for about 5 years now. Essentials on your ute for touring. I guess the key things that you rely on. Love your pulley, XX. Cheers, mate. Okay, so essentials for touring. Now, this is a very broad thing that, you know, everything on this ute's essential for my touring, but the main things or the key things, rooftop tent, for me, essential. I don't like setting up a swag, fine for a weekend, even a long weekend, but going touring, rooftop, so much better. Next thing would be good suspension. Good suspension, not just for the fact of ride comfort. Obviously, you don't want to be sitting in a rough car while you're touring for all that time. You're supposed to be on holidays, it's supposed to be enjoyable. If you've got bad suspension, it's gonna suck. The second reason for suspension is if you have cheap or bad suspension, you're gonna find that it'll fail when you go away on some really rough remote stuff. You might find yourself in a situation where you're a long way from wherever you can get a shock and you're bashing down a corrugated road and a shock rattles apart and jabs the shaft into your wheel. I've had that happen before and, you know, it's not ideal. So good suspension. Another thing would be diff locks. Heavily rely on diff locks and a winch. Going away touring and planning to four-wheel drive in a car that's not set up correctly is not enjoyable. So diff locks are a big thing for me, and also a winch just from a safety standpoint, because a lot of touring that I've done, I'm on my own, and you know, if you get, like, I don't use it much, but when I do need to use it, I'd be buggered without it. So yeah, definitely from a safety standpoint, a winch. Bluetooth snorkel, 100% for touring. And everything else on this ute that you can see is, for me, a key thing for touring, which is literally everything. I've built the car for that. So yeah, got a good one here from 5Toxy_. He said, why have you stuck with coils instead of going coilovers like everyone else? This is a very good question. I think a lot of people just jump into wanting coilovers because they're cool, which is fair enough. I would too. Basically, the main reason I haven't done coilovers in this, well, there's probably three big reasons. one of the reasons. It costs a lot of money and is very hard to do. So there's a lot of fabrication work involved. You know, I've got to shift everything in the engine bay. I'd have to cut holes in the guards. I'd have to have holes in the tray, you know, to fit it all in. So that's one side of it. The second thing is it's harder to get engineered. So when you start doing that much work, you've got to think, how the bloody hell am I going to get this engineered? The engineer has to look at so many different things. The setup I've got now, the J-Race setup, it's literally comes with 200 pages of engineering for my engineer. The third thing that I would say would be the weight. Now, if you look at this car right now, I've obviously tried to keep it as lightweight as possible. This is an aluminium tray and that's an aluminium canopy, and it doesn't have a lot of stuff in it. This is basically my touring setup. I'm ready to go away. I've just got to throw clothes bags and food in there now. There's going to be guys that disagree with me, and there's people that probably know a lot more than me too. I'm no suspension guru. I know a bit about it though. Coilovers are very sensitive to weight and they work absolutely great in a race car and whatever. This car's not a race car. This car is a tourer. It's got a GVM upgrade in the back. It's got big coil springs that are designed to hold weight, and I've got weight on it. I think that for a touring car, it probably works better for me to just have a normal coil shock setup and leave it kind of standard. I don't need 14 inches of travel to go to the tally track, but it is very cool, and I've got nothing against people putting 14-inch coilovers in a car like this. Good stuff. Personally for me, I just think it's not worth the hassle. I've got another car for that reason, which I'm building from scratch. Righto, now I've got a good question here from Casey Scarlett, who says, how the f do you fit a winch in that bull bar? Alrighty, let's have a bit of a gaze. The reason I'd suggest why he's asked this question is because my bull bar is a very sleek, slim bar that's tucked away. Purposely done this so it doesn't dive into the ground every time I try and drive up something. As you can see, the wheels have got a pretty clear run at anything that I want to drive up, and it's not sticking out too far. Also, I have had a few people ask a few other questions about this winch because I only just recently put it in and I haven't really covered it. It's a Rumba EWB 12K Max. It's just a standard 12 volt low mount. It has a massive spool on it with 35 meters of rope, and it also has an air clutch. Now, what this means with the air clutch is you don't have to reach in there and fiddle around to put it in free spool to pull it out. It's not the same as a high mount winch or a competition winch, but it does the same kind of thing. It's got a little air solenoid, which is like a locker solenoid, and you put some air into that and it disengages the clutch and lets you pull the rope out. I was going to show you how this winch works, and I've stumbled across in a bit of an issue. I have got a flat battery. Now, this is not staged. I've genuinely got a flat battery, and I did have some questions about the battery. I'm not going to go and try and find them, but people have asked about my Mega Life battery and it's flat. Now, firstly, I'm going to explain why it's flat. In my Canopy, I've got this Go Block in here, which is on a Go Block dock, which clips in and clips out. Go Block's basically a 100 amp hour portable lithium battery. It's got all the sockets and all the plugs and everything on it. You can take it out, put it on the ground and use it down there, whatever. It's from Red Arc. It's a Red Arc Go Block. Anyway, it's on this dock. You just put power into it from your starter battery and it just works out when the car's running and starts charging it. It's voltage sensitive. It charges all the time off my start battery. This is because I haven't got a normal lead acid battery. I've actually got a lithium battery. Now, a lithium battery doesn't drop in voltage. It's always 12.8 volts or 13 volts or whatever. So the smart system in my Red Arc Go Block, it thinks that the battery has got heaps of charge in it or the car's running or whatever, and it can, you know, pinch a bit of power out of it. But what it doesn't know is that I've got a lithium battery in there, and when it's on 1%, it'll still be running 12.8 volts. There is a way around this. What I need to do is the wire that runs from this battery to that battery, I'm gonna have to just put in a manual ignition switch isolator like a normal dual battery isolator, which is what you'd have to do anyway with a normal dual battery system, but you shouldn't have to do that with this. But because, yeah, I'm running the lithium, I need to just have an old school isolator between the two. I haven't drove the ute, it's been sitting around, so yeah, that is why it is genuinely flat. So I'm going to show you how this Mega Life battery works though, because it has a jump start feature. It actually put this on my Instagram story the other day, and you would have seen it. That was when I went to start the ute up to bring it into the shed, and now it's flat again because I haven't charged it. This is a Mega Life lithium battery. It's 100 amp hour and it's a start battery. So this battery is designed to go in an engine bay with all the heat, and it's designed to crank a starter motor and whatever else. Another little feature it has is this button here. This button is a little reserve capacity that's built into the battery for when it's flat. There's another part of inside there that's not flat, and if I press that button, she starts. Come back here, turn that off, and if I leave this running, it'll charge back up. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pop this circuit breaker so it's not gonna charge up my other battery. So back to what we were talking about, the winch and the air free spool. I'm gonna show you now. I have got the winch here. It is locked in. She is not coming out. All right, so now we're around here in the cockpit. Basically to free spool, I'll hit this switch here, and now we can run the winch out. Then when I hit this button again, that takes the air out of it and it will actually lock back in. There you go, she's locked in. The main advantage of this is you don't have to fiddle around inside your bull bar looking for the little handle. A lot of the time when people are needing to use their winch, it's not them putting the winch in. So you've actually got to explain to the person how to do it. By having the button on the dash, I can just press that and tell them to pull the rope out. Doesn't matter who it is, I can just press that button and away it goes. I've also got my winch isolator on a little bracket here that I made. So to use the winch, I actually need to click that. And then I've gone and wired in my winch to these switches here. So I've got winch in and winch out. As well as those switches on the dash, I actually have a little Rumba Bluetooth remote. Turn on with that button. I can use it as well, which this is handy for exactly what I'm doing here, running my winch in, just so I can hold some tension on it, which I obviously can't do that when I'm sitting in the cab. I've got the option, I've got a hardwired solution to the dash. The battery goes flat in this, whatever, I can still use it on the dash. That'll always work, but I can get out of the car and use it with this one. I think a big question is going to be for this winch, how fast is it? Well, it's no twin motor 24 volt setup for a low mount, off the shelf, and you know, a fairly reasonable price. I think a lot of people would probably agree with me. It's pretty bloody good. Obviously, probably going to be a bit slower when it's got some load on it, but yeah, for what I'm doing and the amount of use that I'm going to need, it's got 35 meters of rope, an air clutch that I can press on the dash, goes in and out, and I think it'll be awesome. Righto, now while we're at it, I've had a few people ask me about the air setup. Also in my last video with the internal bead locks, and I showed my air setup. A lot of people just wanted to know more about it, so let's have a look going on in here. But I have got 2 compressors in there. These compressors are from Onboard. This hose setup is from Outback Equipment. Now this is one of those things that has the 4 hoses all connected to it, and they go to your wheels and you can plug it in and let them down or pump them up all at once. Now what I've done is I just chopped it and hose clamped it onto some barbs, so it was like permanently built in my tray. Now this one goes to the front wheel, and this one just reaches the back wheel. I cut it as long as I could and it just works. Although it looks complicated, it's pretty simple. 2 Onboard compressors here. Now these both feed into an 18 litre tank, which is mounted under the tray. It's probably a bit overkill, but anyway, it's in there. Now these compressors work off this switch at 70 PSI. It's probably about to come on. When that hits 70 PSI, compressors will start up. When it gets to 100, they'll turn off. This line here feeds into this block, and the block feeds all the wheel stuff. On the block, I've got my 2 hoses. One goes to the back wheel, one goes to the front. Around this side, I've got a couple of Darchie chairs in there, but I've got another 2 hoses. Same deal, one to that wheel, one to that wheel. One of the main reasons that I used these hoses is because of this little quick connect on the end of them. So traditional tire deflator, you know, you screw it on there and you've got to muck around a bit, unscrew the valve. I know if you do it wrong, people have the valves flying off in the dirt and lose them and stuff. None of that. Probably not as quick, but it's probably quicker in the time that you save from just plugging it on versus, you know, having to muck around. So yeah, that there just clips straight on. It's got a little button on it. So very, very quick and easy. Once all the lines are clipped on my block here, this gauge reads the pressure in this block. What I can do is I can just dump the air out of them. When I turn it off, this gauge will tell me how much pressure is in this system. Basically, when I want to pump them up, I turn this one on, which lets the air in. It didn't kick in because it's not turned on. For it to actually work, it's got to be turned on. So that makes a bit of a difference. You get the idea. Just think of it as like this block here with the tire hoses and everything is separate from the whole air compressor thing. So the air compressors are just plumbed to the tank and they just pump up the air, and it feeds the lockers and the winch and whatever else. And then this little tire setup thing is its own little thing, but it's got a line going into it from the tank. This little block here is separate from all the compressors and everything else. Just think it's just sitting there and it's got all the hoses to plug the tires in and let it down, but it also has a hose going into it with air pressure from the tank if I want to pump them up. So that's why that's there. Why did you go with a smaller canopy over a full-size canopy? Very good question. It's 100% to do with weight. If I was to have a full-size canopy here, it would be very big and very heavy. The actual canopy itself probably wouldn't weigh a lot more than this one. It'll definitely weigh more. It's extra weight that I don't need. But if you have a big canopy, you're gonna fill it up with a lot of stuff, which also weighs more. So basically the idea of it is I don't want the weight. Another thing is the height of it. The weight that I do have is here. I don't want the weight up here, and the bigger the canopy, the higher the rooftop is, and the higher everything is. You see these cars with like rooftops above the roof and whatever else, and personally I just don't want that when I'm trying to climb up some flexi rocks and stuff. What I've tried to do is build a touring setup that doesn't affect the way the ute handles in a four-wheel drive situation. I can still comfortably do some fairly hard tracks with all my stuff because I've minimized it to only the stuff that I need, and I've made it in a way that it doesn't affect the center of gravity too much, and it all just works. This is an aluminium tray, this is an aluminium box, and this is pretty low. As you can see, my headboard is up here and my rooftop's actually lower than the headboard, whereas most people would have their rooftop on top of the car, which is, you know, starts handling like a boat. While I'm here, I guess we'll have a look in here because that is some of the next questions. I'm not going to bother going finding the questions. I'm just going to give you a look and show you. Obviously, I've gone with a lower mounted box to keep the center of gravity down and a smaller box to make sure it's not too big and heavy and I don't take too much stuff. I wanted the space on the tray to put spare wheel, rubbish bags, stuff like that that I don't want in the canopy. So I actually designed it so it was exactly a 35 amount of tray left to put my 35 on there. Inside the canopy, I've got a 30-litre drawer fridge here, which is full of hard fizz. That's basically the drink fridge, purely just for drinks. I've made up this shroud thing that goes around it. So there's actually a fair bit of room that's wasted in there, but you know, it just gives the fridge a bit of room to breathe. On top of it, there's also a bit of mesh down the back and stuff like that. This is my Coleman barbecue. I've just changed out the Weber for a Coleman because the Weber took up like all this space here. It was just a big, awkward size. So I've gone and got a 2-burner Coleman. That there is a Dachi table, and this is the ladder for the rooftop, and it perfectly fits snug in there. It's all tight, so I don't even have to put a strap around that. Obviously, it's the pub truck on tour. When I designed it, I put all these holes in purposely for a hockey strap, so if I do need to tie something in when I'm doing rough tracks, I can. But basically this area, I've got a couple of plastic tubs to go there, and that'll be our clothes bags and stuff like that. Now, as for the 12-volt setup, literally it's just a go block on a dock. I can take this out, I can use it for other things. Got an inverter here, this is to run the Starlink. I've got a flat mount coming for the roof. Bang that in so I can just plug the Starlink in, it's just enough for it. Got some fuses and stuff over here which run the speaker and the lights and the fridges and everything, so I can easily access just the fuses there. There's only a handful of them. I think these are Terraloom Industries, basically amber, white, or both, and it's really bright. They are adhesive, but they also have a spot for a screw. On this other side, you will see that this awning, this is getting moved up a little bit tomorrow, but just for this video, I'm going to show you anyway. The door does open up and everything. I would just like to raise this awning up a little bit so it opens a bit more. Basically, I've got a fridge here and some drawers here, which is like my pantry. Also got a light on this side. This is a king fridge, and yeah, basically the reason I went with this fridge, it's actually a King 4-wheel drive Super Center fridge. The reason that I went with a 4-wheel drive Super Center King fridge is because they are the only people that make a 60-litre drawer fridge that's the perfect dimensions to fit in here. I had to raise it up to make sure it opened over the seal. But yeah, I can't fit an upright fridge in there. A chest fridge is a pain in the ass, and it was also like 500 bucks. So 60 litres of drawer fridge storage. That's for like all the food and whatever else. Got these little drawers here, which this is like pantry kind of stuff. Just in here, these are actually frying pans. Can't remember the name of the mob, but they're in Bendigo, Victoria, made in Australia. These are little canvas bags for your frying pans. This is like a little grilling pan from BCF, and in the other one is a round pan. Just wanted an actual bag for the frying pan because expensive non-stick frying pan, you can't just have them banging around in the Canopy. So very, very good idea, those. And also if they're covered in a bit of grease and oily stuff. On here, I've got this like organizer thing that Jess brought. It's got like all the knives and forks. We've got air guard and sunscreen and all the things like that. It's on Velcro, so you can just take it off and take it out, but we don't really have to. Left this part here through, so if I need to put something long in there, I do have the option. They slide in there. Got a little bit of room down here. I've got a fishing rod and stuff tucked in there. This here is just normal LPG gas bottle, permanently mounted on the back. The little cooker that I've got, worked it out so I can set up a little table here, and the hose reaches to just plug straight in. The reason I've gone for a gas bottle like this mounted on the back is I was worried if I got those little green cans, when I run out, I might not be able to get one because, you know, they sell them at BCF and wherever. Where I actually live here in Emu, I can't buy them. So it just made sense to get a normal gas bottle. I can buy this at the servo. It's a swap and go bottle. So that's why I've done that. Like I said, I've made the hose, so it just plugs in. Don't even have to take this off or anything. Another thing is, it's on the back of the ute, it's out of the Canopy, and it takes up a bit of this space where it belongs. Obviously, on the back here, I've got the Eco X gear speaker and my spare wheel. I've also got a Dachi gear bag, which hasn't actually got anything in it, but just for the purposes of this video, that's my Dachi gear bag. I think this one's a 60 litre. It's called a Nero 60. It's a really heavy duty bag, and yeah, it folds over itself, and you know, nothing in there is going to get wet or dirty. Whether we actually put important stuff in there or whether we just chuck the rubbish in there, it fits on there perfectly and it'll tie down nicely. So I actually have two of them, but I think that I'm only going to take just this one. Got my rear drawer here, which is got my King Chrome kit in here, a couple of King Chrome kits. I've got a King Chrome jump pack. I've got a couple of soft shackles and a rumba thingy for the winch. I just ordered a whole heap of parts from Drive Tech 4x4 to fill this drawer with. I've got a whole major swivel hub rebuild kit and like a bunch of seals and other bits and pieces, and because I've only just ordered them, they haven't turned up in time for this video. So if I get a chance, I might just quickly run this through in the next episode when I'm heading on my big trip to Cape York, what spare parts I'm taking with me. So while we're on the subject of the touring setup, we'll have a quick look at this awning. As I mentioned before, I want to lift this up a little bit. As you can see, it's actually kind of flush with the rooftop. It's flush with the headboard and it doesn't stick out or anything. And I was limited by these mounts that they supply, and I actually chopped a bit of it out of them so I could push it in as far as I could, but it's mounted to the canopy, not the rooftop. I wanted that so it was a bit stronger. Run out of slot to push it up, so I'm gonna have to take it off. I just put it on there to see if it'd work, and it worked, and I had to go on a trip. So yeah, in my Cape preparation, I'm gonna lift it up a little bit. I don't wanna go too high, but I'm just gonna, yeah, move it up a bit. I'll open her up and give you a bit of a look. I revolve a lot of things around weight and not taking things that I don't need to have and stuff. So this is a 180 awning, not a 270. I didn't need a 270 because I don't need that much space to sit under an awning. Got the 180, which is just a little bit more compact and smaller. One of my favorite things about this awning, how cool are these lights that are built into the arms? Whoa. Now these go in amber or white or both or whatever, controlled by this little switch thing here, but how cool is that? First set this thing up and I've got, you know, this brand new 180 awning, it all folds out and everything, but I'm starting to feel a little bit old having one of these on the car, but I don't know if this is the part in my forward driving time where I start booking in big 4 caravan parks and stuff. For the little bag that I have to carry around on the side of the rooftop, I think it's well and truly worth it. How good is that? So I guess that pretty much covers most of the touring setup, so I can close this up. I've already rambled on enough. You've already heard enough. Next 2 episodes are actually me on an adventure. So let's move on to something else. Right, we've got about 10 questions here from Mac Preston. How much would you sell it? When you're painting it black? When's the next trip with Maddie, TJ, Macca and Blake? Very soon. I'm going to start reading Mac's questions, but thanks, Mac. What influenced you to start posting TikToks? I don't know. I'm a very creative person. I like to create things, whether it's a ute tray or a car that's massive and painted gold or a video. I'm a creator. Like, I like to create. So that's why I started making TikTok. That was where I started. It was an easy platform to, you know, share some stuff, get some feedback. It was fun. So it's like a hobby. How many times has it been through the KFC drive-through? Wow, a lot of times. Zinger or a Zinger stacker burger? It depends how hungry I am, really. If I'm really hungry, stacker burger for sure. But, you know, sometimes just a little snack, Zinger burger's all right. Jack Crombie, 99, has said, what have you broke on it? The roof. Everything. I've never blown a CV, I've never blown a diff, I've never blown an axle, I've never done a gearbox, I've never done a motor, I've never done anything other than locking hubs, wheel bearings, a few suspension related parts, 1 cabin, and, you know, cosmetic stuff where I've smashed into things. But flog the guts out of your car, you're gonna break stuff. I don't flog the guts out of it all the time, and it doesn't have a ridiculous amount of power, which is what will also break stuff. So yeah, that's all I've really broke on it. How far do you have to sit not to get your enormous? How are the inner beadlock tubes going? So I've done a couple of hard tracks on them, went really well, and I've done a trip to the high country on them, and probably maybe 3,000 or 4,000 Ks, and I haven't had an issue yet, but I'm about to pull them off and check all the pressures, check over everything. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I'm about to do that in the next few days, so I'll be able to give you an update in the following videos. That's an easy one. I've got Will Davis 1811 here, who said, how flogged out is the motor, you mad rooter? It's actually pretty good. Although I've limmy banged it lots of times and I give it a bit of a flogging, the 180,000 Ks that it done before I bought it was untuned and with full Toyota service history. So I've serviced it the whole time. I've never had an issue with it. Like I said, I've done a starter motor and a couple of little bits and pieces, but you know, nothing. I haven't even done the injectors for it. They're sitting over there on the shelf in the boxes. I haven't even put them in yet. They're a pretty reliable motor if you don't spruce them up too much and if you look after them, just like any engine. Any regrets on going the lower height in the Canopy? I would say no, 0 regrets at all. Another thing that you probably wouldn't think about, when I'm opening my rooftop, when I'm setting it up and when I'm packing it up, it's right here. I can do it, I can walk around and I can tuck it in. There's a lot of advantages to it actually being lower, other than the weight and stuff. What seats are you running and how did you make them fit? These seats are the factory seats that come in a 2020 Workmate cab, because they come in it. So they're just the factory Toyota bucket seats with some sheepskin seat covers on them. This one, as you can see, she's nearly worn out, but I didn't want to replace it before I go to Cape York because it's going to get ruined. So new set going on when I get back. Another guy also commented, how's the center console going? Don't know if you made it or if you work there or if it's your business, whatever. Mackay Auto Trimming console, awesome. Still going good. There they are there. Mackay Auto Trimming, had it for about 3 years. Absolutely love it. While we're in here, CSS steering wheel, I've put the Toyota badge back onto it. Got the Road Vision panel, genuine 1-stone armrest, got a 10-inch Alpine subwoofer in the back. I just shifted my amp up onto the back wall there, so it's just a Alpine Type R amp. Last time I went to Cape York, I filled the cab full of water and destroyed the amp and had to buy a new one for 600 bucks or whatever it was. So I've shifted it to the back wall for this time. These trims from Frenchie's Fabrication, I've got this one in there for gesso. She's the passenger princess. How good's that? Oh, over here on Uncle Paulie's side, we've got the Fence Checker Express. I've got a Zinger Box air freshener that Fizzy gave me. This head unit is like a really cheap eBay one that I got about 4 years ago, maybe. It's still going. Obviously got the GME XRS unit there. You're not gonna believe this, but I've gone all out for this trip and I've bought myself a cruise control kit. So I'm gonna have the luxury of cruise control in this Workmate Land Cruiser. Auto Strata kit, and it comes with like a factory looking handle, which I'm hoping will go in the CSS steering wheel and work. I don't know, I'm gonna find that out when I do it. Would you ever go a big winch like a modified H274 or whatever and whack it on 24 volt? Very good question. I would certainly go a big twin motor high mount winch in this ute. There would be no even hesitation about it at all. The two problems are, I'd have to build a new bull bar and I'd have to have a lot of money, and I don't have time or money to do either. So maybe one day, but third reason is it's also probably not that necessary. This isn't the kind of car that you would see in a winch challenge. Probably don't need that extreme of a winch, although it'd be cool and I have nothing against the idea. I definitely would have that if I could. Baz has got an 8274 fully kitted out sitting over in Bendigo with Mitch, and it will be going on very soon, 24 volt set up with it. So I'm going to do a whole video on that, which will be, yeah, later this year. What bar are you running? This is an Emu Customs bar. It's custom with a K. This is a bull bar that I made myself out of 32 NB tube. All of these plates were laser cut. I drew them up and dimple dyed all the little holes in them and whatnot and made it work. This is some bar work that I also fabricated out of 32 tube. There's quite a lot of it, and it wraps around the cab and back onto the tray mount. This rock slider setup and the scrub bar and even sort of the bull bar. It's one of the things that I probably wouldn't change on the car. As far as the trays and stuff, the reason I keep building new trays and changing them is because I just get better at it. I don't want to be driving around with last year's tray when I know how to do more things this year and can build a better one. Righto, Ruben here has asked to have a look at the exhaust setup. Well, let's have a look at it. There is two 4-inch stacks coming through my tray, which come up through the floor from down here. There is a bit of a schmozzle going on under here, a bit of a U-shaped piece coming into this big piece, which this is all 4-inch stainless. It's pretty old. I made this a long time ago. It's also covered in dirt and stuff. I don't bother polishing it. It's not a showpiece. It crosses over down here because I used to have a fuel tank here, so this is like the pre-DPF where the exhausts go. And yeah, it comes down here and it is 4-inch all the way to the turbo. So someone's asked here, what attracted you to the color and did you see it on a car before? This gold color is from an NP300 Navara and it's called Hornet Gold. And when I was choosing a color, so I had a brand new white cab here, and I was like, I didn't want to paint it a color that you could just buy from Toyota, because I was like, oh, that'd be kind of silly, you know, I could just go and buy one. So yeah, this really fitted that category because it's so different to everyone else, and I thought if I'm going to go to the effort of repainting the whole car myself, because this was a do-it-yourself job, I painted it out there in the wash bay on a weekend. I thought if I'm going to go to all that effort, I want it to look a bit different to everyone else's, so I picked this color and I'm so glad that I did it. It's a transparent metallic pearl, so it's got all the stuff in it that makes it hard to paint, but makes it look really good, especially the way that it sort of changes from gold to bronze and stuff. Time to have a look at the suspension underneath, because there's been a few people that have asked to have a look at both the J-Race stuff and the rear end, so I guess we'll go for a crawl under there. So basically what I've got is a double triangulated 4-link from J-Race, full track corrected diff housing that comes with all the mounts and stuff on it, and then all of these chassis mounts and stuff is what I've done in the conversion as a certified installer. Then I'm running King's shocks in it from Mike's Shocks. We recently valved them, there's an episode on it. The way that you call it double triangulated is you can see that these lower arms are actually offset off the chassis and they are pointing outwards, and then the upper arms are the complete opposite. And what this means is that it keeps the diff central with the chassis when you're driving down the road, so it makes it drive straight. Basically, it's all part of geometry and you could get into a lot of it, but yeah, all suited for GBM. J-Race does these up to 4 ton, engineered, legal with about a 3-inch lift and 315s. A couple of brand new tail shafts in it as well, and that is my boosted built garage electric handbrake in there, and this is a bit of a bash plate for it. which braces up to there. I was sick of those little rock lights not being bright enough, so I just went and put 4 work lights underneath. These light up the whole everything. Obviously J-Race radius arms. There was a couple of people asked how I get the front end to flex, and some aftermarket radius arms. I've got 12-inch shocks in it. These are PSR flexi coils, and yeah, it flexes heaps. As you can see, I've got a fair bit of shock shaft length there, and that is because I've dropped my mounts on the diff. So instead of being up at the top of the diff, I've made custom ones that are at the bottom. Got some fancy steering links, both the front and the rear. They're from J-Race as well. As far as the suspension goes, I've got 2.5 King shocks all round. They are 12-inch travel. I've got the J-Race double triangulated 4-link in the rear with hydro bumps. They're King hydro bumps in the rear, and I've got hydros in the front as well. It sits around 3 to 4 inches. Ideally, I'd like to have it sitting about 3 inches. I actually don't like the car to be high, more for that handling perspective. But if it's too low, then you also don't get travel in the shocks and you'll be just on the bumps all the time. So yeah, around 3 inch ideally. Depends how much weight I've got. This is probably 2 to 3 inch, how it's sitting there now in the rear, and it's probably 3 to 4 in the front. J-Race kit obviously utilizes the DFI torsion sway bar. What this means is the rear end can still articulate and flex and do everything that it needs to, but the sway bar still works like what a sway bar should work like, where it stops the body roll and whatnot. Another thing that I've done under there recently is put the 130 litre tank out of a late model V8, and also my tow bar is welded into the chassis. There's a bit of paint missing off it here and there. I'll jabber the slut. And yeah, my tow bar is welded into the chassis to get it up nice and high, and it's all nice and neat and tidy. So there's a few other bits and pieces that I haven't covered. I can't cover everything, but I've covered most of the things that people wanted to know and all the questions that you've asked. I'll be here for hours if I try and do them all, and I've got stuff to finish doing on the ute, and I've got to get it packed, and I'm going to send it to Cape this week. If you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up, and make sure you subscribe if you want to see more, and especially if you want to see this car tackling some of the most famous tracks in Australia. That'll be coming in the next few weeks. If you are a regular viewer of Old Uncle Paulie, you may find that we skip an episode because I'm going away for multiple weeks, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to edit on the road and whatever, so might be 3 weeks before the next episode instead of 2 or something like that. Stay tuned and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out.